The Rockpile Report, the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bills season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And in studio with us, riding shotgun, Mr. Doug Relosky.
Hi.
Doug, how are you?
We're doing well. Everything is good.
Crazy week for Bills fans. I question how you found out about it since you don't have social media.
I'm going to tell you exactly without lying one bit. All I do is in my search engine, when I go to Buffalo Bills, that's all I click. And then when I scroll down, you know how Twitter updates, it gives the feeds or perspectives. I just look on that and everything updates from you crazy assholes who have social media, which I don't need to do. And I get all my information there. And that's it.
Here's what I love. Doug shares a Facebook with his wife. But what's awesome is his wife's way out of his league. Like,
super.
Dude, hey, listen, guys, cheers. Let's all raise a glass to outkicking our coverage, if you will. Gentlemen, all three of us, we've all done surprisingly well.
We did well.
Somehow, some way.
Hurricane tongue for this guy.
Well, for him, I think it's just... I don't know. I'd like to know, like, he's getting married at the end of March.
Mazel tov.
Doug, he's locking it down. As I take a sip of this, I'd like to toast to your pending nuptials.
All right, cool.
Yeah, hey, it's awesome.
He's
doing the Lord's work over here.
He's doing the Lord's work, dealing with me by night. Well, me by night, her by day.
Get ready to have sex on every other Tuesday. That used to be so fun.
So now I'm smelling this cocktail Chris has made for me. Obviously, he served it to me in a coupe. This is what I love. I now know, because of Chris, what all these fruity glasses are called. That's a Nick and Nora.
Yeah.
And this is a coupe.
You can't say that word.
Doug, I don't want to. I do know how offensive this is.
Look at you. You have a fancy watch on. You're not even wearing a hat. You got salt and pepper hair, bro. Bad.
Dude, it's bad.
You got a nice wedding ring, and you're drinking that.
I know. God. I should throw my pinky out while I do it.
You look like you've become Brian Evans.
That's inside baseball. Only a handful of people get that.
So funny.
So
this is outstanding, by the way.
So obviously this is a gin drink. It's clear. It's clearish, and there's obviously citrus in it, both with the color and what I see floating in it. But it doesn't smell like anything.
Is there some licorice in that?
Oh no! It's another one of these anisey.
Is that anise?
Come on!
Anise.
Okay. Here's the problem with these cocktails you keep making with whatever spirit that is. It's close enough to black licorice that I want to set fire to this room.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of going to my grandmother's house and grabbing the piece of hard candy that was in the tray, but it's still stuck together to 14 other pieces because she had it there since August.
Yeah, that's probably the best simile you can find for this cocktail because there's a sweet part of it, and you go, oh, that's not... there's something else in there.
But it's good. This reminds me of my childhood.
This
reminds me of a 74-year-old Italian woman. It does.
Doug just crushed it because now that's all I can picture as I sip this is just an old lady's candy.
The only
dish.
other thing is having gin with like rose water in it, and it's that old lady perfume. That's
all you, brother. All right, I don't touch that. Now, Chris, what are we drinking here?
I got this off of Instagram.
It's good.
It's called Spring Feeling. 1.5 ounces. I used Beefeater gin. 3/4 of an ounce of green chartreuse. 3/4 of an ounce of fresh lemon juice, and a bar spoon of simple syrup.
Simple.
I, on the other hand, am having what I like to call a Georgia old-fashioned. It is Woodinville bourbon, a bar spoon of brown sugar syrup, a bar spoon of pecan syrup, and peach bitters.
Of what syrup?
Pecan.
But yeah.
I was going to say.
Thank you. Pecan.
You dirty northerner.
Excuse me, young massa. How you doing today? You look good. That's what you sound. You just sound like you wanted to talk down to people. That's what exactly that was.
Oh, my God.
Drinking this drink makes me feel like I have something to do with the plantation.
Like a bit of a dandy? You feel like a dandy? Is that it?
When you get into town, you can come stay at my family's home.
He's Ashley Schaefer with worse hair.
Yes.
Don't worry, Jasper will take your luggage.
You want
Jasper,
my
go
possession.
get him.
No, the best is he is a geisha. He is a geisha for these. A Kia is a fine Korean automobile.
My son Gabriel came into the room. My wife said, "Leave, Gabriel." I said, "No, let the boy watch."
So you're lucky you don't have social media this week.
Super glad.
I bring that up because there's a lot of pomp and circumstance. Obviously, it's where you go to get breaking news, go to interact with other fans. But there's also a lot of patting oneself on the back. Now, I've taken a lot of flack this week from certain attorneys who need to find more to do at work instead of just sleeping in their offices like Andy Cap and playing chess. But the fact that the Rockpile Report did not have an official stance on every single move, or that we're not active on Twitter, or that I'm ignoring group chats where people are having in-depth conversations about what's going on, and somehow that's like a negative thing. Meanwhile, I look at what's happening on social media, and in fact, Chris, if you could just pull this in here to my single shot, guys. If we could sit down for a minute, let me rap with you young children here. I'd just like to rap with you for a second. Now, guys,
Preach.
We all like to have fun, right? Like this podcast, we joke about a lot of things. We talk about alcohol use. We talk about so some of the things I've dabbled in over the years, some of the trouble I've caused. We've all gotten into some things, right? The one thing that I recommend you don't do, guys, listen, you can booze. I talked about a week or so ago about dabbling in the world of psychedelics. Doug here has even watched me enjoy some Colombian rowdy powder off the back of a Bolivian.
Yes.
And that guy was pissed.
It was a good night.
But with that in mind, I implore you, please don't smell your own farts. Guys, inhaling your own farts is a terrible idea. And no, I don't mean literally, although, yes, literally is probably a bad idea too. Imagine being the person who walks around patting themselves on the back for what essentially amounts to a hobbyist's bloviation about things they think might happen.
No one likes a cocky douche.
Well, it's worse than being cocky. Being cocky is one thing. I'm cocky for reasons nobody can really put a finger on.
It's your arm length.
That and the fact that I've survived things and sets of circumstances that I have no right.
Oh, you should be dead.
I'm like,
and you're one of my close friends. Like, we should have buried you years ago.
At the same time, being the guy smelling your own farts can lead to a lot of problems, right? Like, it's a slippery slope. You start having a couple cocktails and talking about things you think you know, start talking a little cap, start making draft prognostications. Pretty soon, then you're on Twitter bragging about how you called, like, oh, I knew that they were gonna make this cut, or I knew that this was gonna happen. Next thing you know, you're the guy wearing a fedora and unironic suspenders at your family's Thanksgiving dinner. Doug, you become the guy who is laying down trying out mattresses
at JCPenney's. At JCPenney's. No, this is a great one.
It's a level of pretension that's unparalleled.
Just so gross.
It's gross. You're the guy who's talking to a group of people at a bar, and you decide that you have to use SAT words.
It's unbelievable the length that people take to be like, yeah, man, I called that. You know, I knew the cap hit was going to be $2.8 million in the savings, so they were just going to do it, and then their aggregate was going. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
That guy is one step away from dressing like Thomas Shelby in Peaky Blinders, and just walking around like that on a random Wednesday.
That's it.
I'm telling you guys, as a public service announcement, please stop smelling your own farts. Nobody likes that.
No, you can't.
It's bad for you.
It's bad form, too.
It's bad for you. I promise. It doesn't lead anywhere positive. With that said,
you're not wrong.
We have no interest in this here at the Rockpile Report because I don't care if you think I'm smart. Mm-hmm. I think I've given you all the evidence you need that I might not be. I might be one of the dumbest people to sit behind cameras this expensive and a microphone this nice. Chris, is that not a fact?
Fact.
Bang.
That's fair.
And yet you're here watching it. You're here listening to it. It's because you're my people.
That's it.
And we love you.
We're all the same.
We'll drink to that.
Cheers.
Chris, raise a glass. Cheers.
Cheers. March what? March what are you getting married?
March 22nd.
All right.
He totally lied to you just so you wouldn't hear it. I love Chris.
Well, you know what? I got a text today from Reed because there's like two people, him and one other person, were like, I didn't get my invite. And I only know this because Reed said something to Drew about it.
He texted me.
And then Drew told him the wrong date for the wedding. And I had to text Reed this morning. I'm like, I don't know what happened. I mean, I sent it to your Buffalo.
I was looking out for your best interest, dude.
Why wouldn't he be invited to my wedding?
Who am I to assume who's invited to what? I've always learned, as a guy who probably has something shady going on most of the time, like, to carve out the last decade of my life, from 28 backwards was just a mess. You were there for most of it.
Yeah, it was
Doug, you saw most of what was going on.
Good times.
So what happens is, I get a text from Reed Ferguson going, oh man, I don't think I'm going to be able to make. He's like, I know Chris's wedding's coming up. I didn't get the invitation yet. What day is it? Now I'm thinking in the back of my head, because I'm a good friend, I remember him talking about how he had a limited guest list. And I said, what if Reed didn't make the cut? Okay, that's entirely possible. I should probably use subterfuge. So instead I go, oh, I think it might be this day, but I'm not really sure. My wife knows all the dates. And then he's asking questions about it, and I just keep giving him ambiguous answers. And then he's like, oh, well, I might not be able to make it, but I want to try, or at least send him a gift. And I was like, oh, yeah, travel. I don't travel anymore since I had kids. Double finger guns. And then I see Chris the next day and go, hey, just so you know, I don't know if you invited him or not.
But it got brought up.
But it got
Why
brought up.
wouldn't I invite Reed to my wedding? Do you know?
I'm just looking out for
Do
you.
you know the financial impact he could have on my wedding? Why do you
Hold on,
think
wait a minute. Hold on. Listen, I know the NFL grosses over $10 billion a year. You're talking about a long snapper. What do you think he's going to give you?
I hope he gets you the cheapest wedding gift. I hope
he gets you pasta bowls.
Dude.
I hope it's not even cash.
From
Reed,
IKEA?
Reed, if you are watching this, and you know me, if you're watching this, please get them pasta bowls. And not the expensive stuff from Sicily.
The stuff from Target.
Yeah.
Target.
You know what? Actually, no, he's right. Don't get anything here. Drive over to Canada. Go to Canadian Tire. Get Canadian Tire pasta bowls. They don't just sell auto stuff there. You go. I just did a Canadian Tire pitch on the Rock Pile Report. Okay?
These guys, Chris, clip that. We're going to send it to him. We're going to pitch this.
That's it.
We'll be the official podcast of Canadian Tire.
Listen, we go to Port Colborne every summer. I love Canadian Tire.
I'm not going to lie to you. A kid named Hector. So it was one of the funniest things. We took a trip to Montreal our freshman year of college.
Love Montreal. Montreal's fun.
Everybody's 19. Actually, it was our second year. Kid breaks up with his girlfriend. Guy D. Giovanni goes, hey, guys. All right, random spin the globe. I came up with Montreal. We're all going. We pile into an Astro van and we drive up north. And we're drinking in the van. We get to the border. Turns out, first of all, nobody's a fan of you when you're drunk at the border. And you're trying to register this kid, Hector, who is a 6'4", 155-pound Puerto Rican kid. And
Beanpole.
And all he wears, his entire wardrobe is just velour tracksuits.
I like
velour tracksuits. And Sean John, that's all he wore. Now you try to go to a bar called Brutopia in Montreal, and the guy at the door is just like, no sweatpants in the discotheque. And you're like, wait, what? No sweatpants in the discotheque.
Bibliodiscoteca.
I go, this is a brewery. What do you mean no sweat? So after we get over the shock of our friend not being allowed in, we go to a Canadian Tire and buy him a $19 pair of Dickies. And he's going to walk around in a Sean John top that's blue and red with Dickies on.
I can't believe I'm going to tell you guys this. I'm 37. I just got scolded by my wife the other day. I almost bought a $378 Ralph Lauren Polo Dookie Brown tracksuit.
Dude, I'll tell you this.
I almost pulled the trigger. My wife goes, what are you doing? I go,
yeah.
I have to get this. She goes, is this 2003?
Guys. We have been drinking together, Doug and I, for the better part of 15 years now.
Sure.
I will tell you that the line that has never gotten old between us and our group of friends is whenever Doug walks in the room wearing one of these ridiculous, like, he's got a tracksuit on, like wind pants and a thing. He's straight out of like Always Sunny making fun of, like, what's that show? The Sopranos?
Yeah.
Like, he's
Looking
that
good.
character.
Looking good.
And it's every single time you see Doug like that at a bar, one of us will come up to him about halfway through the night, pie-eyed, and just look at him and go, Doug, what exactly are you warming up for?
I'm
Hey,
feeling
guys,
good.
look at him. Look at him. Doug, what are you warming up for?
Listen, for you haters out there who don't know,
Hater.
all right, a nice tracksuit with some K-Swiss and a gold chain and some hoop earrings, that's the way to live your life. If I was like an NFL coach, that's exactly how I would dress every day of my life.
You and Deion Sanders. Jesus.
All day, that's how I would dress.
Well, I'm happy you're not our coach. Our coach has a little more discipline, and our front office has a little more discipline, and that's what we're here talking about
I'd
tonight.
look so good.
Chris, we went from a retooling to a red wedding. Okay? It was one of the crazier Wednesdays in Buffalo Bills history. I want to start this with a quote. Life belongs to the living, and he who lives must prepare for changes.
Sure.
Do you know who said that, Chris?
Charlie Day, Always Sunny.
Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Now, you, because you're uncultured swine, have no idea who that is.
No.
Yep. Doug, any idea?
No, I'm not even, nope.
Yep. So have you ever heard of Faust?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Faust
Oh, here he
is
goes.
Faust is one of the greatest and one of the most replicated concepts in literature is this idea of a man making a deal with the devil in order to get something he wants, because each of them thinks they can trick the other into it. I mean, it's the basis of The Devil Went Down to Georgia. It's everything.
Meeting at the crossroads. Learn how
It's
to play
one of the most
guitar.
replicated stage concepts in all of plays and throughout literature history. Chris made a Faustian deal, right? He said, I want a podcast. And the devil was like, okay, cool. We will give you a podcast and
You
cameras
sold
and
your
sponsors.
soul for this?
But unfortunately, you have to deal with this piece of shit for the rest of your life. And he pointed to me, and Chris was like, I guess I'll do this.
I watched him scream at you like a child when you were 110% right and almost got thrown out of a moving vehicle. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, Drew, he's right. Like, you need to calm down, and you're almost putting this fucker out.
I tried to throw Chris out of my moving truck. Actually, I stopped. I stopped in the middle of some road. Where were we? What road was that?
New Armor Duels.
New
Yes.
Armor Duels. And I demanded that Chris get out of my truck. And Doug's over here trying to plead Chris's case, and I'm not hearing it. How funny was that from your perspective?
Well, you were just trying to get home. You were mad that we were losing to the Giants. I understand, and he was correct. The way you were going was ridiculous. Like, you could have went 14 different other ways and we would have got back to your house sooner. And when he yelled at you, you went like a child who just he ate your last slice of pizza that you had been waiting all day for, and that was at home. It was in the fridge. You were waiting for it. It's 1 a.m.
I like that he knows this because I've actually done that to him.
And that's exactly what you did. I saw a rage inside of you that I haven't seen in a very long time. You just lost it. You lost it. I haven't seen you that mad
Since Brittany?
No. Since the Wind game versus New England, when we decided to kick the field goal into the wind. And then I think I can say this. I watched Drew wish AIDS upon the Brian Daboll family for the play calling that was happening, and a woman in front of him turned around, who we did not know, was like, "Are you okay? You're pretty sick." And Drew looked at her and said, "Lady, I don't care what you think. Get out of my face." And then he stormed up to the truck.
I realized I was out of line and recused myself immediately. Because, again, I'm a bad person, but hey, at least I'm not on Twitter patting my own back.
Very true.
I still think that's worse.
Very, very true. I
can
think
all
it is
argue-
true.
we'll
You
argue
can
about
wish
that in-
AIDS upon anyone or AIDS needles upon anyone. That's fine. But, yeah, you can't be that Captain D.
And I didn't wish it on his whole family. I just said, I hope somebody finds one on a beach. There was a certain someone I targeted, and I was like, I hope they find one on a beach washed up on the shore, and then that guy has to go out there on the sideline in a skinny jacket. But either way, I'm a bad person. Everybody knows this. So, we all knew changes were coming.
Yeah.
Change is the thing. Like, that's life. Everything changes over time.
Yep.
There is nothing here that is sacred. There is nothing here that will withstand the test of time. Everything will inevitably change. Every player who this team has ever revered eventually moved on. Mm-hmm. We watched Andre Reed and Bruce Smith play games in other jerseys.
Washington.
Thurman
Denver.
Thomas played for Miami. And yet people are going to stand here and act as if the release of Tre White and Jordan Poyer are the straw that breaks the camel's back for them.
Joe Montana played for Kansas City. Emmitt Smith played for Arizona.
This is what I'm talking about. We knew changes were coming. Some people were hoping they would be small changes, just incremental tweaks to the roster that were going to help us, like, hey, we'll tweak this, we'll tweak that, we'll keep everything status quo, and we'll make one more run at trying to get over this, and try not to fail in a divisional round matchup against Kansas City or Cincy.
Sure.
Some people, like myself, were out here dancing for rain, trying to will the Buffalo Bills franchise to generate as much dead money as possible here in 2024 so that we could throw the window of competition wide open again from 2025 on, just to capitalize on the rest of Josh Allen's youth and maximize our opportunity to see a Super Bowl. Like, how old was Jim Kelly when he made his first?
Well, remember?
Do you know?
When he got...
That'd be 90.
No,
we
went 90, 91.
Yeah, it was drafted in 83.
And then he went to the USFL for a couple years.
My point is, even the most ambitious of us, like myself, like me...
Most likely 30 years old.
Okay, so he was 30 when he made his first.
And Josh is 28.
Okay. So we're coming up on what could be like the same
Peyton Manning
trajectory,
didn't get
like,
to one until he was 30.
So we're coming up on these, but
and it took him 5 tries to beat Brady, by the way.
And this is it. And you see this thing coming where you're like, all right, this thing has a life cycle, and it's all around that guy. And so we have to try to make sure that we can have this for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Even I was unprepared for just how deep this team was going to dig. I mean...
Bean went Michael Corleone.
Went
Michael Corleone on people.
That's a great analogy. I could not have predicted the chaos and the salary cap bloodbath that was about to take place.
It's because we have not seen it since he's been here. He hasn't had to do it. They've reworked some stuff. They've done some things, but he hasn't had to do it yet, and that's just where we are at. There are some big contracts on this team of high-end positions that you have paid. You, unfortunately, with age, too, because they didn't cut anyone really young, with age...
They were the oldest roster in the NFL last year.
And it stinks because it's a necessity. It is. And us, we understand it. No one's crying over the spilled milk. I understand why some people are upset. I get it. Poyer, Hyde, Trey, they're all here when we're turning it around after we sucked for so long. They're coming in, they're high picks, they're good free agent signings, and they turn it around, and now after almost a decade, they're gone. So I get it, but it's a necessity and you have to move on.
If there's anything I've learned just in life, it's that, like, one of my favorite scenes, and actually I was reminded of this by a friend of mine recently, just some of the stuff I've been going through personally. A friend of mine texted me, and we were talking about a situation, and he reminded me that line from the movie Unforgiven.
Good movie.
Deserves got nothing to do with it. Listen, does Tre White deserve to be cut like this unceremoniously after everything he's done for our franchise? No. Deserves got nothing to do with it. You don't get to pick the way you go out, right? Mm-hmm. Did Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde deserve to leave the roster that they've stabilized on defense for years without a AFC championship ring? No, but them's the breaks.
Right.
I'm sorry, it's over. Like you did the thing, and
Curtis Blow. These are the breaks.
Curtis Blow, and so this is it. In just the span of a few days, the Bills absorbed over $15 million in dead cap for 2024. Just a few days. And while they have to wait for June 1st to realize all the cap savings from the Tre White situation, but they've already said they're going to do it.
Right.
By announcing it and making it a post-June 1 cut, they're actually doing him a favor. Because they could technically keep him on the roster until then and then just cut him. The Bills won't get their money. Like, people who think he's being done dirty, the Bills won't see the cap savings until after June 1st. But Tre White can go sign with anybody he wants to now.
Right. They're doing him a favor.
They are letting him get out there to go find his value. Now, for people who go, oh, well, they screwed him. You don't think that there's been conversations ongoing between him, Bean, his agent, about how do we make this work? We have a functional cornerback room right now.
We sure do.
We have a functional room. So now the question becomes, what are you going to do to try to acclimate to the room that kind of, like, we did okay without you? And if Douglas was healthy in that game, maybe it's a different ball game altogether against Kansas City.
Oh yeah, that's a whole different.
I mean, that dude was
conversation.
he was robotic out there with a knee brace on trying to play. If he's healthy, who knows how that game goes?
Right. You don't know, and there's other things that you could bring that are brought up, and you're right.
It's just the concept that you don't think they tried to figure something out.
Sure.
If they couldn't, wonderful. He's betting on himself, and he has every right to. He's a talented player when he's healthy. It's just he's suffered some catastrophic injuries for a guy who doesn't tackle well and isn't built well to be a physical player.
He's a 29-year-old with 2 major leg injuries who has a singular skill set.
Yes.
That dude, healthy, baller in coverage.
Yeah.
He ain't going to get 20 picks a year. He will knock it down and break it up, though. And he was an outstanding corner. I hope he still is. But if you're talking shoulder, if you're talking elbow, hand, neck, you needed arm surgery, you tore your bicep, you tore your pec, whatever, he would still be on this team. When you're talking about a torn ACL and you're talking about a torn Achilles to the other one, and you've missed 3/4 of the last 2 seasons,
I can't pay you $60 million.
I can't. Not when I'm paying a quarterback like I do. It doesn't add up.
No. And so here's the question I want to go around the room with. Out of all the moves that were made, which one was the biggest surprise to each of you? Chris, we'll start with you since you haven't said anything in a while.
Well, it's easy. It's Mitch Morse. Is it McGovern behind him? Like,
apparently,
or is there a free agent center that we can get?
Well, the smart people.
What does the draft look like for centers? Those are my concerns.
For that question, there are specifically 2 centers that could go in the first round. Okay, there's Frazier from West Virginia, who I would say is number 2, and there's Poyer Johnson from Oregon, who is the number 1 rated center. But there's 4 total that are going to be drafted in the first 3 and 4 rounds. There's those 2 guys I just talked about. There's Van Pret from your SEC at Georgia, and then there's Bertoli from Wisconsin, who put an absolute show on at the Senior Bowl and at the Combine. Nasty, big, fast. So there are 4 main options that if you're Buffalo, zero doubt, if you want to go that route, you are going to be able to go that route. Or if you want to go a different route and you want your McGovern at center and you want your Edwards and maybe a rookie to battle for the left guard position, you could draft a Nugent from Michigan in the 5th, 6th round as a project, if you wanted to go that route. So there are different options. I think there is only 2 choices that the Bills have here for that position. They are either A, going to draft a young kid to take over, or 2, they're rocking and rolling with what they got. They are not signing anyone.
See, I can see them. Chris, how many times year over year over year do we just find bodies late in the free agency cycle that we throw on the offensive line? That's how Quentin Spain got here, and he earned a contract extension.
He did.
David Edwards is here trying to spin the same thing, and not for nothing, David Edwards is a guy who has a Super Bowl ring as a starter on the offensive line.
That's why Bates became expendable.
Yes.
They used Edwards. Now, thank God the offensive line stayed together for the majority of the year. Actually, the whole year.
Yeah.
But when we were doing blowouts and stuff like that, it wasn't Bates the first guy in. It was Edwards.
Yeah.
And they're really in love with Alec Anderson. And what's the other dude's name?
Alec Anderson and
Yes.
Not Van Riemsdyk. That's
No.
a hockey name.
No.
Chris, where's the Bills are, lads?
Right there.
There we go. Vandemark.
Vandemark, that's it. So, like, I've heard a couple people say, some of these people, I've heard them say, well, why would they cut Mitch Morse and get rid of Bates? Because they like those three other guys better.
Yeah,
and
just
people
like 'em.
forget when they sign.
Well, they like the price of them.
Yes, when they signed McGovern's last year in Dallas, he was the center on a playoff team.
Like, you got to think, Morse, Chris, to your point, manned the pivot since Josh's sophomore season. It's really the only center he's ever known who didn't get him killed.
Yeah.
And at the same time, primary interior offensive lineman backup who could play any position with Ryan Bates. Like, any position. And so that makes you think that you also got to remember Tommy Doyle's here, too. Now,
Yes.
Tommy Doyle has
Two leg injuries.
But he's not making Tre White money. So
No,
you say,
and
hey, 2 leg injuries, we're willing to bring you to camp and see what you got.
Right.
Because when you were healthy, you were rounding into form. But who knows what that is now if we bring in some competition late in the draft.
And he's young enough where you can keep him to throw a flyer on him because he's cheap and young.
Yes. Right. And so that's it. And
Mine was Trey, just because he was the first draft pick by them. You know, he is like,
Well,
as if this means anything for anyone.
I'll say this, Doug. He was McDermott's guy.
He's a McDermott guy.
He wasn't Bean's guy.
No, but I don't think Bean had the call on this. What is McDermott's number?
Bean hadn't been hired.
What is the number one thing for McDermott? What does he always say? If you listen, not the normal stuff, the let's play complementary football, let's not turn it over, not that. Availability.
Yeah.
If you're not available, they're not going to throw money at you. They're not going to take a chance on you. That's a philosophy.
So we just found out a little bit about how much McDermott values availability. He looked at it and said, listen, Rasul Douglas tweaked his knee and was able to get back in time to be here for a playoff game.
Right.
Now, you can argue what his usefulness was, but he was back. He was on the field. McDermott cares about that. Here's a guy who has, for 2 years, missed giant swaths of time. Huge. 3 years. 3 years, actually, because he missed the whole first half of that season and then wasn't ready to go until late.
Him and Hyde.
And Hyde, and this is it. You see this theme of, hey, you're not available, you're aging. Yeah. We don't think it's going to get better because it can't get better.
I'm sure Poyer was tough for them because even with the elbow and the pec, he gutted it out, man. He gutted it out. Do you remember that? You remember that Baltimore game in the rain when we were losing 20-0?
Dude, I remember Jordan Poyer, okay, driving to Kansas City because he had a bruised lung, and they said they were like, oh, don't get on a plane, like it'll swell your thing up too much. And he was like, fine, I'll pay to take like a bus for me and my family and my friends because we're going and I'm playing in that football game. That's a warrior. That is an absolute warrior, and yet you had to move on.
Yeah, and that dude, like I said, Bills fans, I understand. You mad at that. I get it. That dude, like he just said, warrior, but it's a need.
Now, I will tell you what my most surprising thing of the week was. When's the last time that you heard of a guy who understands what he's worth taking an $8.5 million pay cut?
That shows me that he understands the business aspect of
Von Miller getting that, what is not even like because you could, for all the people who like to go and do the Spotrac like cap manipulator and they want to play around and be like, well, I could make a thing. Nobody could have ever called And anybody who says that they like, oh, I called that they would get him to do this, you're a liar. Because I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have bet on a multimillionaire who knows the cost of money and like what they can do for you.
Right.
To walk away from $8 million.
Plus all his legal obligations you might have to account for.
Yeah, but that's in Texas.
But a guy who literally said, I'll shave $8 million and I'll put these into performance things that I'll probably never earn because I want to be here.
Sure. It says a lot, but it also says...
And the meme game was hilarious on Twitter, where they were like, it's always like this guy looking at this, like the guy sitting like this while someone's glaring at him. They're like, it's Von Miller watching all these guys get cut, knowing his contract's the reason. He's like,
yeah.
Shit.
One
of them was The Undertaker when he was laying in the casket and then like kind of opened his eyes and looked around like, yikes.
It's just also, too, it's his end game for when he wants to do after football. He's already said publicly that he wants to be a GM. He wants to run and build a team.
So you think that he has an appreciation for the position Beam was in and was like, hey, you give me a solid, help me.
No, but
I'll do you a solid, you do me a favor.
I think it's more this. I think it's, let's say he gets his wish. Let's say he becomes a GM one day of some team or assistant GM. He's going to be able to go to a guy and say, hey, I need you to take a pay cut. And you know what?
I did it.
And thank you. That guy is not going to be able to say, no, man, I need my money. Von's going to be able to do this. Bro, I'm probably a Hall of Famer. I've won 2 Super Bowls, and I did it. Mm-hmm. What do you got?
What are you going to do? This is the nature of the business. All right. But to me, that was the most shocking thing of the week. You don't just get money out of multi-millionaires who have the leverage because they can just tell you no and force you to be like, hey, do I cut this guy and eat all this dead money now? And instead, Von made it work for reasons that are just like escape me now. Like I can't understand it.
When people get mad at Brandon Beane for maybe swinging and missing on some draft picks, for trading up on a Cody Ford, for trying to get not being able to find a spot for a teller. Remember this. Remember his talk game. He just talked a Hall of Famer, 2-time Super Bowl winner, to take that big of a pay cut.
And this is the thing, like Beane, if you look at his draft history, it's been the free agency that is kind of made up for all of his misses in the draft. His draft classes, how many players have been like, we take in the late rounds, end up on other rosters? How many guys, like we like to applaud him for the Gabe Davises and the
Milanos in the
Milanos,
fifth, the Beneford in the 6th. You know what I mean? He's gotten some value. You're right.
We like to applaud him for this, but we've probably derived less value from the draft than most teams who are in our position competing for titles.
And that's got to change this year.
And so the idea is he's very good when it comes to these negotiations.
Sure.
And it's also interesting to see him making these, making these types of moves. It's also interesting that the players that we released, right? Mm-hmm. All of them had a contract either ending this year or next year.
Yep.
This is him doing the thing. You're throwing the window open, going, hey, I need to create as much space as possible. And if I don't see you 3 years down the road being on this roster, then I don't need to talk to you.
But he also sees the future, too, I think. So after this year, he sees that he's going to be able to, if he needs to, he can get out of the Diggs contract. Well, he can get out of get out of Von. He can get out of Knox. But he also sees who is showing up. What happens if Shakir takes a monster step?
You pay him.
You have to. What happens if Bernard takes another step and becomes an all-pro?
Well, and this is the conversation because in a year, he's going to be a free agent.
Just saying.
And you can't pay 2 $15 million linebackers.
Right.
And so right now, Milano's probably watching this going, what do I want to do? But then he's watching Von Miller saying, all right, well, He's setting precedents,
sure,
is what he's doing. And the philosophy, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to move on because the meat and potatoes here, like we've already talked. Chris, where are we at?
You have a guess?
I want to say about 36 minutes.
You're about right.
Hell yeah. The real question is, what do we do with all this newfound money? Because all of a sudden the Bills have the ability to do some things. Some things that we didn't think, because no one thought they would go this far. Now you have, and then you figure extension of Ed Oliver, or not extension, but restructure of Ed Oliver, easy, because it's a simple restructure and he doesn't have to approve it.
Josh's restructure.
Josh, you do it with Diggs but maybe you don't. And this is it. Maybe you don't restructure Diggs. But either way, you're going to end up at about 23 to 25 million.
Sure, where you have, that's where I think, this is where I think he's headed, like that, where you just said that. I think he is going to spend the majority of that on veteran, affordable defensive linemen.
Okay, so we talked about it last week, Chris. Have to address the defensive line somehow. Because you can't go into the season with just one defensive tackle under contract.
No.
You can't do that. And you can't go with a boatload of rookies. That's not going to help your linebacker core.
No.
So realistically, but there's also guys like Poona Ford. A year in your system, just like Taylor Rapp, who you don't trust to be a starter, but for the money you're going to be paying them this year and next year, it almost doesn't matter. You can bring them back on a 3-year deal with a void thing in there. You can make this work to find depth at defensive tackle. Sprinkle a rookie or two in there.
Yep, absolutely.
But you can make this work.
Brisky from Florida State, ship it.
Oh, you like that guy?
Be great in the third round. Be great. Be great. Vontez Sweat. Oh.
You've got the safety room that we already talked about over in our AFC's roundup. Just talked about how like you can do a lot of things there, given all the changes to the safety market and how they've become like running backs in terms of their expendability.
You have a lot of things in your favor because the safety market is oversaturated. The veteran defensive tackle market is oversaturated. Like a Daquan Jones, been a fantastic player. He's 32. What big contract is he getting?
Yeah.
He's not.
No one's. There's probably very few teams fighting you for him. So you find, but you want to make sure he feels good about it. So
and he's familiar here.
So you find a value that fits with a term that fits.
Sure.
Term is maybe the most important thing. Now I don't care about the money. I care about the term because he's an older player, and I want to make sure that we have a plan behind him. Now it's on the draft. I think that also the one thing you have to spend, like if we could talk about how you want to proceed, just positionally for a second, before we talk about names and guys we like, because this is the last show we're going to record before free agency. I think you have to go out there, now that you've built a little bit of runway for yourself, you have a real opportunity to do a thing. And it's going to speak to what they feel about Stephon Diggs. If they go through with the Stephon Diggs restructure, it means he retires a Buffalo Bill
100%.
because you actually will not be able to get rid of him.
Right.
Financially, it would be reckless to try to offload him. If they choose not to, and that's the way they're leaning, then I think that you still have the runway to go out there in the future cap space. Because I think, Chris, right now they're looking at, if you look at the Bills' salary cap table right now, Chris, if you just Google Buffalo Bills salary cap table and and you look at what it looks like next year in 2025, I want to say we're probably somewhere in like the $35 million range for cap space.
Yeah, next year, and this is what, so 20 after 20.
Estimated cap space after 38. Okay,
Yeah.
so I was close. So we have almost $40 million in future cap space.
And that's without getting rid of Vaughn or Diggs.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. If you were to offload those contracts with, well, but look, $27 million, but he still costs 22, so you're only getting 5 back. Von Miller, you're only getting 5 back. So you could be at 50, but you're going to be without Diggs and Vaughn. Now, I don't know what they are at this point in their age and their careers, but the reality is you have a couple different ways you could go. If they choose to rebuild and keep Stephon Diggs around here,
Who's only 30.
and they restructure that deal and they say, listen, we're going to take 4 more years of you because we think we have a plan. We're going to move you to slot. We're going to do different things. Great. You can go out and now go get a credible veteran wide receiver number 2.
Kendrick Bourne.
Chris, if you want to go to that free agent tracker and look up the wide receivers.
How about something like that?
Well, look at this. So when you look at who's out there and who you might be able to structure a 6-year or a 5-year deal if that's what they want.
Are you talking this year or next year?
I'm talking this year.
I'll go to 2023, Chris.
Here we go. This is this year.
Oh, perfect.
So when you look at this, there's guys out here, right? Like you have your Curtis Samuels. You have guys like this. But I guess my point is if I'm just talking about the position, there is tons of wide receiver depth in the draft.
Oh, my God.
And if you decide not to restructure Diggs, then you could do the thing where you double dip, maybe even triple dip at the wide receiver position and rebuild your room for the future. And that's just it. That's the way you go. But if you want to keep Diggs, if he's in the plan for the foreseeable future, you could, in theory, still get another great wide receiver talent in the draft. And then also go out and pay a guy to be the number 2 that you didn't trust Gabe to be game in and game out.
So here's where you're at right with that. So you've already lost Harty,
Yep.
Sherfield,
Yep.
and Gabe.
Now you have Shorter, who didn't play.
Right, but why did they? All right. So let's hit on Shorter. Why did they draft Shorter? They draft before the hamstring injury
Because they
big,
drafted physical guys who can play special teams.
They drafted Shorter to take over for Tywan Jones.
Sure.
That's why they didn't re-sign Tywan Jones
except
last
Tywan Jones is a
offseason.
running back, and this is a 6'4".
No, I'm
wide
saying
receiver.
last offseason to play gunner for special teams. That's why they went there. I still think that's the plan with Shorter. If Shorter turns into DK Metcalf 2.0 because people think he has the same body type,
I don't think he will
either.
But the idea is, But this is my point.
They need a couple rookies and a veteran.
Can I say? But so this is it. You bring in a veteran, but why does it have to be a cheap Trent Sherfield-esque signing?
It doesn't have to.
When now with the cap space we have, you could go out there and make a play for a guy. So if you're looking for someone, Chris, if I'm just thinking to myself, I say, hey, do you want to make a Kelvin Ridley offer? And then say, hey, now I have a deep threat, because we've all seen that Diggs doesn't have that. You've got a Khalil Shakir who can play inside and out. And then you go into the draft and you give yourself options. Like when I say, hey, I love the idea of a Xavier Leggett.
Sure.
The problem is he's raw. And he doesn't have the seasoning, but he's this guy, big athletic freak of a wide receiver, 6'1", 221, runs a 4.3 40.
Now you can take your time with him.
You can take your time with him, mold him into what you want him to be. He's not the sharpest technician yet, but you can get him there. And at the same time, like the Bills have proven they love drafting these clay blocks that are just freak athletes that they can mold into what they want them to be.
Sure.
And you can get Xavier Leggett for less than a first-round draft pick.
You can, yeah. I mean, he's going to be able to. He should be able to fall into the second because of the depth of the wide receivers this year.
And so the idea is also what you're getting is a guy who they've prioritized. Like that was the reason they loved Gabe. They go, look, we need a guy who can go out there and also run block his ass off. Well, you're going to be able to get that on the outside. But you can take a flyer on a guy like that in the draft.
Oh, sure.
If you go into the season with a great outside number 2, a Stephon Diggs who can play outside and inside, and a Shakir who you can alternate with Diggs in where they line up. This is just all, but again, I know Mark Smith will be crying in his fucking bran flakes about this.
You know who would have been? But
it's all about theory of how they want to build this roster, and they're about to teach us a lot about what they prioritize.
Well, that's why I'm excited about how they're going to go, because we haven't seen a dumping like this before, and it's going to be. There's no doubt about it that they have to get younger.
Yes,
there's no doubt about it. That's why, and I'm very upset that he got franchise tag. It's smart that this team did it. Pittman Jr.
Pittman Jr. was the one. That was the one. That was the one where I said, man, if we can just get our hands on this guy.
So let me ask you this. Let's just say for what you just brought up, let's say the Bills go after and let's say they sign Calvin Ridley. Okay? Let's say they get Ridley on this team or Marquise Brown. You still drafting a wide receiver in the first round?
Absolutely.
I am too, all day.
Because now
without
what
a question.
you've done
Chris, you okay with that?
Yeah. Sign me up.
What you've done is you've turned something of not a weakness, but I never want to go into a divisional round game.
I never want to throw a 60-yard double coverage bomb to Patrick DeMarco in a wild card game again. And count on Duke Williams is going to have 300 yards receiving. No, we got this. It's John Brown time.
Chris, my meltdown.
Patrick DeMarco, that happened.
Was that 2 weeks ago? I had a meltdown over the same play.
Holy shit.
I go, if I ever watch a fullback,
Double covered.
get a pass down the seam, I'll take both thumbs and shove them into my eye sockets. I don't need to see anything else. I'm done.
Chris, you remember? We're in his basement. We're with all of our friends, our family. Hell,
Your dad
my mom
showed
and
up.
dad are over your house.
And
I'm sitting next to them.
I'm a
and I just
monstrosity.
I don't talk football with my mother. My mother is fantastic. She understands football. I don't talk football with her. I calmly look at her and I go, did he just throw a 60-yard bomb to the fullback who wasn't wide open, who was double covered in a playoff game? She goes, I think so, honey. Okay. That happened.
Mark's favorite recollection of that game is me just yelling, Doug, what are we doing?
Listen, man, that game.
I needed you to talk me off a ledge.
Oh,
and you
my
couldn't do
God.
it.
You know, like foreshadowing, if you look now where we are, we can all agree that it's Jim Kelly and Josh Allen is the best franchise quarterbacks the Bills have ever had, correct?
Yep.
Oh, dude, they're the only.
Right. Well, Kemp, but that was way before Jack Kemp. Way before any of our way before any of our time. I'm just saying. Tell me that game isn't the perfect example of foreshadowing who Josh Allen is. That dude, first half, played lights out, catching touchdown passes, making sick third down plays to no one, no receivers whatsoever, just doing what he does. And then the second half, it was like, I think this dude smoked meth at halftime because he is playing like Peter Griffin on crack. What is he doing? And that's who it's so much fun to see and to watch. But when it was happening, we had never seen that. We'd never seen that. J.P. Lossman didn't ever do that. Trent Edwards never did that.
I know they didn't get in the playoffs.
My man Thad Lewis never did that.
Thad Lewis.
Who we interviewed, by the way, for offensive coordinator this offseason. I don't know if you know that.
No, I know. And I called him TD, and no one knew what I was talking about. But you know. Hey, we'll save that. We'll save that for later.
Yes.
So
Chris has no idea, does he?
Chris has no idea.
Chris will tell you after. You got to hear this.
We'll tell you after the show.
All right.
So the idea is there's a lot now on the table for them that they can do to change the makeup of what this team looks like. Real quick, let's talk about some names we like. Not because I want to be able to crow about it other than to Chris. Chris hates when I'm right. Like
this is what
Ty and Secchi.
Doug, this is what
Ty and Secchi pick.
Doug,
that was nice.
This is what I hate is as long as we've been doing
I just
this.
take educated dart throws. I'm not trying to. I'm not a smart person.
Maybe you didn't get one last year.
No,
but there's been I would say 4 years out of the existence of this podcast. Drew has nailed somebody that we signed before it happened.
Because it's just okay, I don't have to be a genius to connect certain dots. And I go, all right, well, that guy actually makes sense, and I'm sure his price point's going to be low, and they're going to add him because of some. And then it happens, and I don't take to Twitter and
no. Can I go?
Yeah.
I'm going to start at the wide receiver position, just because of the three people that we're losing. Okay. One of these people will be a Buffalo Bill next year. There's no doubt in my mind. DJ Shark.
Okay.
I would all day be fine with him.
Okay.
2, and I think this is the favorite, Kendrick Bourne. I do. I really think they like him. I think in the correct system, he could be told. The guy had Mac Jones throwing him the ball. Or Bailey Zappi from Western Kentucky. Come on.
I mean, if he's like Spotrek says, now I know that their
salary.
I know that their salary prognostication isn't always the best, but if he costs $5 million a year, all right,
that's what I'm talking about.
I'll invest in a little Kendrick Bourne.
He's not going to break the bank There's no way this dude. Look at him. There's no way he breaks the bank. He's already been in the AFC East. We're familiar with him because we got to play him twice. He's had some nice games. He's had some playoff experience. I think he fits the cheap mold perfect that they're going to have to do.
Okay.
I think that would be absolutely fine. And the other one is Marquise Brown.
Why Marquise Brown?
Because what don't they have at that position right now?
Okay.
They don't have the speed deep threat.
Okay, but what does Marquise Brown have at this point in his career?
Cheap, and he's still a speed deep threat.
Is he going to be cheap, though? That's the question.
He's who's paying him?
I don't know.
Right, exactly. If you can say, I don't know, like when we were talking about earlier about the safeties, when I brought up Budda Baker, I'd love him here, but he's getting a contract from someone.
He's getting a contract.
He's getting you can't say that. Look at all these wide receivers. Look at him. He's got them all up. Maybe, okay, you want to give me Cedric Wilson for cheap? It's the exact same thing as signing Sherfield.
Well, and this is where you don't want to go too far down
Right.
if you're actually trying to change the makeup of your team.
Correct.
So, with that in mind, I like Calvin Ridley. I like the idea of a guy who can catch a deep pass once in a while, who still has the foot speed, hasn't lost it. Actually, the time off might have preserved his career at this age.
You know who he is, though? With the production, he's Gabe. You can't go 6 games out of 18 without having a catch.
And that's fair.
You can't.
But also, do we know exactly what the hell's been going on in Jacksonville? Because
I'm gonna be
Jacksonville
polite.
is an enigma. And
Colin Cowherd had him listed as a top 5 wide receiver quarterback duo going into last year.
And I like Colin Cowherd. I like him.
Diggs and Allen.
Dude,
how about Tyler Boyd?
If you think, what's his age?
Oh, he's old. Tyler Boyd he's old, Doug. He's 29.
Is he an upgrade from Sherfield?
He's 29 years old.
Is he an upgrade from Sherfield?
Yes.
Okay, then he's on the list. Let me ask you this.
Here we go. 29, $8.7 million a year. But guess what? If you spread that out over 3 years, you mean to tell me he's not getting a high dollar contract?
No.
I love the idea of this. It's no more of this, well, I got a guy who can also play special teams and he can run block and then also he can play a little wide receiver because he's fast. No. Give me a Tyler Boyd that I can put out there. I can put a Stephon Diggs, a Khalil Shakir, and then 2 rookies and Justin Shorter. Call that my wide receiver core.
Fine.
I will find my special teams players elsewhere. But what I'm telling you is there are veteran players out there who, when this game of musical chairs ends, they're going to be left looking for jobs after the first 3 days. There are going to be guys who day 1, day 2, you don't hear about.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I want to be. And I'm looking at guys like Tyler Boyd. I'm looking at guys like, I don't know, like Paris Campbell. I was interested in him the last time around in
So
free agency.
scroll down, Chris. If you
mean, Paris Campbell went to the Giants because it was a 1-year prove-it deal where he wanted to show that all of his analytics were real in an offense where he could be featured. But it was the Giants, and everything that they touched turned to shit.
With the exception, on this whole list, look at all these guys, okay? With the exception of Calvin Ridley, okay? I'll give you that.
Okay.
Who's getting a big contract?
No one. And
Not
that's my
one
point.
not one person.
So go get a couple cheap veterans and then make them come to camp and compete.
Yeah,
Make 'em
that's
camp,
fine.
But what you've done is, if you've ever noticed, the thing Bean does is he goes into the draft with most of his holes filled already. And now he just drafts.
Yeah.
Once in a while he drafts for need, and that guy starts. Otherwise, they sit, and everyone bitches and complains about it, myself included. But the reality is that's what's correct. Dorian Williams probably wouldn't have done a better job than A.J. Klein covering Travis Kelce. Maybe he would have, but we don't know. And honestly, his best tape is when it comes against the run. You're watching the All-22 film, which I still do, even though I don't pat myself on the back for it. I watch the game film and I go, Dorian Williams against the run, he's instinctive, he's fast, he can scrape across the D-line and come around and fill a hole. He knows where he's going, he's instinctive. in coverage, he's a work in progress. He's got the athleticism to do it, but he doesn't have the nuance. If they were to go into that playoff game and put Dorian Williams on Travis Kelce, I don't know that it ends up a ton different than it did, but realistically, right, they're going to be fine because they have rookies who are doing the job, who are learning on the job.
Oh, they're going to be counting on some rookies this year.
You want to create an environment where the rookies don't have to be relied on week one to win you a game, wherever the hell it is you have to go.
Now, I don't think it's going to be, with all the starters that we lost, I don't think it's going to be the majority. There are going to be 2 or 3 rookies starting this year.
Of course.
There's going to be.
I don't want them to be on the offense. I want you to go draft guys, at least at skill positions. I do not want rookie skill position starters because that is the longest acclimation period of any player in the NFL.
I think
there are rookie linebackers who come in and do well. There are rookie cornerbacks who do well. There are rookie safeties. There are rookie D tackles.
I'm sorry, no, I disagree. Listen, hold on, wait a minute. Think of the rookie wide receivers recently. Just do all the last 2-3 years, with the exception of Quentin Johnson from the Chargers.
Yeah, that pick sucked.
Right, because he's one-dimensional. He runs a 9 route. That's what he runs. He runs a 9 route. So, with the exception of that, all these guys have hit. They have.
Yeah.
The Addisons from Minnesota.
So maybe the NFL has gotten better at targeting what they want, and we just have to hope our GM is on that curve.
Now, this is me. Now, again, we'll get into this in a later show, but you guys know how I do with all my mocks and how I love watching college.
I'll shoot a gun in the air. If you pull out a mock draft right now, I'll shoot a gun.
Like, you know how I love watching college, and I watch these guys. I love specifically the skill positions because we need one this year. With the exception of Coleman from Florida State, who is a contested ball guy, they say. All that means is he can't get separation. He's not fast enough.
Exactly.
I don't want that guy. With the exception of someone like that, I would agree with you. The Bills traded out of the first, and they drafted Coleman in the early second round. I'm not going to be mad. It's a big body. Let him learn. Bring in a Calvin Ridley. Let him go forward. All these other guys played in big-time competition, big-time games, produced outstanding interviews, outstanding combines. You go get that guy. If Addison with his little behind, Devontae Smith, Bama, with his you're telling me Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Malik Neighbors, Rome Adezoun, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brian Thomas out of LSU, these guys are day one starting on teams.
Off the bus.
They are day one starting. You know how nothing's handed?
Yeah.
They bullshit.
Unless you're Reggie Ragland.
They are Reggie Ragland. Yeah. Oh, my God.
Unless you're Adolphus Washington and Reggie Ragland, in which case Doug Whaley comes out and goes, these are off-the-bus starters.
No. Unless they're that, you're right. Xavier Leggett, raw. Coleman, raw. Roman Wilson, not going to be a number 1 or number 2 receiver in the NFL. Nope. He's going to be your Shakir. It took Shakir a minute.
But if you're a Ladd McConkey guy, see, this is why I love to have you back for draft conversation.
Malachi Corley, Ladd McConkey, all these guys.
But you've made your point. We need to lay the foundation so that a rookie can come in here and be successful.
Sure.
And I think that they have the space to do it. I'm interested to see how they attack this, but I think they can make the play where you go, let's find a wide receiver who can be the number 2 now, maybe number 1 after we move on from Stephon Diggs.
And
then we draft everyone's replacement.
Right.
And in 3 years, we're in a place where now we have a cost-controlled wide receiver room that's the most effective in the AFC.
And here's where we're ahead of the game. We're not just counting on Diggs. Let's take Diggs out of it.
Yeah.
You have Kincaid, you have Cook, you have Shakir. And now throw Diggs in there.
Places you can put the ball.
4 weapons that Josh is already comfortable with going to.
Build on that.
Sure,
when
absolutely.
All this stuff. So Pro Football Talk ran an article today about how Sean McDermott realizes the need to weaponize Josh Allen. It's like, yeah, okay, now's the time. Probably because he realizes I can't make this defense what it has been for the last 5 years.
Yeah, no, we got to score some points.
So we're going to have to win games
Sure.
with offense. He's finally coming around, but he's saying it publicly now. He's going, no, Josh Allen, I've watched all the way that all these star quarterbacks for the franchises I played for, we need to empower them.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever heard it or ever seen it. Hopefully he backs that up with a little action.
I just want to throw one guy out there. Just
Before
one.
I close this, you get one.
All right. I want one guy. Okay. SEC guy. What do you do if Brock Bowers takes a tumble and you can get him?
What?
What do you do?
Oh, Brock Bowers, I have no interest in another tight end.
Zero, even though
None.
he's none.
None.
So you wouldn't. I'm just asking.
We're
as a
paying
Bills
Dawson
fan.
Knox way too
I
much
got
money.
it. You can get after
Kincaid,
that. Would you take 2 Kincaids on your team?
Nope.
Chris?
Because they can't. I need a run blocker. In fact, I would sell Dawson Knox right now for a good run blocking tight end and a backup running back.
Oh,
I would.
They need.
I need a blocker on the line so that we don't have to. We needed Ryan Bates to be a 6th offensive lineman. Why? Because we don't have a blocking tight end. This roster is not balanced. They bet on this is the big thing. If there's a final thought that I'm going to close this podcast with, I started it with a quote, and I'm going to end it with one. The changes that we made, beer. The changes we dread most may contain our salvation. There was some Barbara Kingsliver. Now,
Who is that?
some old bitch. What I know is that the sins of the past we're paying for now. The idea that you could sign Vaughn to the contract you did and get him in under the cap and, hey, we'll just kick his money down the road. You're paying for it now. Now you're seeing the cost of signing Dawson Knox to a contract extension that put him in the top 10 of the NFL when he's never produced
I know.
on par with it. You're watching the failures of a GM. We talked about the players not being available and that playing a role in their being cut. We also need to be fair to the players and talk about the GM's mistakes.
Sure.
The GM made some mistakes that landed us where we are today. And in doing so, we had to say goodbye to some of the cornerstones of what this franchise has become over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking in a way, but it's the cold reality of sports.
Got to do it.
Now, there has been a philosophical shift, though, in watching the way he went to it. Because he could have stopped short, and he didn't. He pushed the envelope on all of the wholesale changes he was going to make.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes me feel better about the direction of this, because what it tells me is that from a coach and a GM,
They're on the same page and they understand.
they are not only on the same page, but they both understand that we gambled and lost in a few places. And now we owe our pound of flesh. And this is what it looks like. Mm-hmm. It looks like not having, when you have Sean McDermott on national TV talking about how it's only a matter of time until we get that Super Bowl. It's your fault Tre White's not a part of that.
Sure.
It's your fault that you can't keep Micah Hyde around for that. You made poor choices.
He knows.
But I'm also happy to see that they have it in them. That they have it in them to reinvent what this thing is and say, listen, we're in the middle of what people think is the window closing. And I just sent out a tweet today and I followed it up with a DMX gif because that's how I do things. Somebody was pointing out, they were like, oh, well, the Bills window is firmly closed. And this guy from the Chiefs was like, well, why? Why? Why do you believe that the Bills are done? He was like, well, their defensive backs are terrible, and this is this, and that's that, and they just lost their Pro Bowler and all-pro guy. And I had to kind of go back and go, do you understand? Do you understand that Benford, and I rattled off some stats, Tehran, Douglas, and I was like, I could do this all day. I could do this all day. I can tell you why that's not the... If you want to tell me that this whole thing's going to come off the rails, it's not going to be because the defense lost bodies.
Oh, there it is.
Bang, look at it. Among qualified quarterbacks.
No. At least it's a good sign if you don't understand how this is working and the trend that the league is going in.
The Bills are a part of the trend
They sure
that is
are.
driving the league.
And they need to understand that offensive wins.
And they've been willing to sacrifice old, expensive, and injury-prone in order to get there.
Availability.
I'm not going to lie to you. It's cold as ice. It's brutal. But that's sports. That's any sport we've ever loved. And as I said at the top of the show, we've watched our namesake players, guys that we hold near and dear to our hearts as Bills fans. Those of you who are old enough to be watching us on YouTube and understand how video works. Like, you guys know that we as kids got to watch Bruce Smith, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, everybody who mattered except for Jim Kelly, because the fucking Jaguars broke his leg and ended all of that.
Natron means.
Natron.
Thank you. I was at that game with my Uncle Dave and my brother.
Natron me.
Look it up. He had over 200 yards rushing.
I know. Damn it.
With his stupid dark tinted visor in the 90s. Dumb.
All I know is that we have gone on to watch everybody who's ever meant anything. Lee Evans was a Raven. Like, we've watched, like, if you haven't learned by now to remove your emotion
Lee Evans, Eric Moulds.
from, like, everything that is gilded now will eventually turn to rust.
Jay Reamersma.
Jay Reavers. Hey, we have a Dalton Kincaid now. We can forget that guy.
We sure do.
The reality is our front office showed us who they are. Mm-hmm. They are with it. And I would rather be on that side of the coin than the other half of the NFL.
Yeah, no. It's a sad day yesterday, but it's a necessity.
That not only doesn't have an NFL quarterback, but is unwilling to do the ugly but necessary things to keep your team on that side of the coin.
You ain't wrong.
Chris, am I wrong in anything that I just said?
I'm not going to challenge you.
Yeah, fucking right you're not. Guys, I can't wait to see what happens in free agency.
It's going to be awesome.
I have no idea. What I do know is that this draft period and this free agency period is going to be their next foray into what the future is. We're watching the future of the Bills play out in front of us. And it's going to be fun because this is the, like, there was that window where you were trying to support Josh, right? Like, it's like a play in a couple acts. We started the show talking about the Faust and how that was a play in 2 acts. Internationally. Mm-hmm. It's widely known. We saw Josh's first act. Damn good. Had a great finish, built to something, but he failed.
Let's see what he follows it up with.
Now, we're going to open a second window and rebuild the roster around this guy. Now, you're going to do it with different defensive ends. You're going to do it with different safeties. You're going to do it with different wide receiver talent. Everyone talking about how it can't get better. Guys, then what do you win this for?
Right.
It's always getting better. It can't get worse.
No.
We're not going back because we have 17. And as long as we have 17, this will continue to improve.
And you're not going to extend 32 and 33-year-old players.
No.
Or 29-year-old former first-round picks who have missed the last 2 seasons. You just can't do it. It's bad business.
I love it. I love where we are. I love where we're going to leave this podcast because I feel like I've said everything I need to say before free agency. And I swear to God, even if even if the Calvin Ridley thing comes to fruition, you're never going to see me take to Twitter and try to brag about it because I'm not an ass. Well, I mean, I am.
You are, but in a different way.
Guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, boys.
Chris,
good hair.
Thank you so much for producing this and putting up with my nonsense every day.
That's going to give it to you.
It's not that hard.
It's not that hard. See, that's because you're broken too.
Yeah.
I'm the normal one in the room.
I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. That's Doug Relosky. This has been your Rock Pile Report.